Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Gravesdale. I'm a solution engineer at PDFTron. And today what I'm going to do is review PDFTron's offerings, both our native toolkits and our web-based toolkits, and talk about some of the use cases that we have for the life sciences and pharma industries, kind of focusing on some of the common problems that we hear about from customers, and some of the ways that our technology stack can address those issues. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of go through sort of blocks of different problems or different scenarios that come up, and just talk about different parts of our technology stack that can apply. So first I'm going to give a bit of background about PDFTron, and then talk about how our technology is used for accurate and secure document viewing. Just kind of going through some of our different features there, and how our technology can help. Our solutions around reviewing and collaboration and approval of documents, especially in a pharma context. Our technology and how it can be used for assembling and anonymizing documents. And then I'll go into some of the customizability around the UI and the user experience. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of go into each of these sections, kind of talk about some of our technology. I'm going to bring up our live demo for WebViewer, and kind of show off some of these features actually from our site. And I'll have the URLs there as well, and you can go to our website and try these features out for yourself too. You can even upload your own documents and see how they work. And actually, our toolkit is available for download too. And I'll show that as I'm sort of introducing the product and so on. And so with each of these kinds of blocks of features, what I'll do is sort of ask for questions or any feedback or comments or anything. And that way we can have kind of a back and forth a discussion about these kinds of features. So if you do have any questions or any areas that you'd like me to go into in more detail, please feel free to post questions in the webinar software here. We also have like a sort of chat interface as well. Whichever you'd like to do, just feel free to post any questions about the software. So what I'm first going to do then is kind of go into a bit of an introduction about PDFTron. And for that, I'm actually going to share my screen here. So 1 second. Just going to share this browser window here. And everything that I'm going to show today is here at pdftron.com. And so you can actually go there yourself and try out this functionality. And specifically, our live demo is here. If you go to just this menu here at the top, and then go to documentation, and then web, and then here under launch demo, that will bring up our live demo here, which I'm sort of showing in here. But you can also get to a lot of other useful information here as well. Like if you go to documentation, web, and then go to overview, that brings you to our guides, download links, API reference, changelog, FAQ. So a lot of very useful information in here. And if there's a specific topic or feature you're looking for, you can search in the guides here right away. So this is a great way to go and find out more specific information about some of what PDFTron has to offer. Now, just a bit of background about PDFTron. So we started in the late 90s, right around the time that the PDF specification was first published. And our initial offering, which we still provide, is a toolkit called PDFTron SDK. So initially, that was a toolkit that we provided on Windows. It's built on a native code base, and in that technology, it's a lot of functionality that we developed ourselves in-house. So, for example, our ability to read and write PDFs, or render PDF documents, or convert between different formats, or advanced functionality like redaction or digital signatures. All of that is technology that we developed ourselves from the ground up in-house. And so from that native code base, what we did was we compiled it over to different platforms. So made it available on Linux and Mac OS, as well as mobile platforms like iOS and Android, and UWP, which is Windows Metro, basically, so Windows Mobile, the kind of application you can get on the Play Store. So we ported it to those different platforms and added bindings for different languages as well. So whether that's Java or C#, C or C++, Python, PHP, etc. And then on mobile platforms, Kotlin and Java and Objective-C and Swift. And essentially tried to make a toolkit that's as flexible as possible and that can integrate with as many projects and technology stacks as possible. And what we did a few years ago is we kind of expanded that offering by taking that native code base and compiling it over to the web, to pure HTML5 JavaScript. And what that enabled us to do is to offer that same gamut of functionality on the web. So not just viewing an annotation functionality, but really, capabilities around the entire document lifecycle. So, that includes sort of the creation of documents, so their initial generation, either from scratch or by compiling from, converting from another format like docx or HTML or text files. In addition to document generation, we also have the sort of maturation stage of documents, the sort of improvement stage where we might take multiple PDFs or other document types and merge them together, doing things like stamping information onto a document, say like adding page numbers or headers and footers or watermarks, doing things like optimizing documents. So if you get a large scanned image in and then convert it into a PDF, optimizing that so that it's not such a large file. Or otherwise sort of improving documents in general. We also have, features around the everyday usage of documents. So things like, bringing up an interactive viewer where you can view a PDF document, search the text, make annotations on top of it, or fill out forms, or collaborate with other users on the document. And we'll see a lot of that in the demo here. And then we have functionality around the end stages of the document lifecycle as well. So, when you're kind of finalizing a document by doing things like converting into an archiving format like PDF-A, or let's say adding digital signatures so that you can tell whether the document has been modified after a certain point, or even add in permissions to help prevent that from happening. And we have functionality around redaction as well, so removing personally identifying information from documents, or confidential information, or whatever information needs to be removed so that you can share that document with a wider audience without revealing information that shouldn't get out. So that same wide array of functionality then is technology that we're able to offer within the web browser too. And just to clarify that functionality is happening purely in the client-side browser. It's not something we're calling out to any sort of external service for or anything like that. PDFTron actually doesn't host any servers or anything. We don't have REST APIs or services that you'd be calling out to. WebViewer SDK is its own standalone toolkit that's meant to run entirely within the client-side environment. It's not something that's calling out to servers we host or anything like that. And that's true of our native toolkits as well. The idea is that it gives you this kind of standalone functionality within your application to provide whatever the users need. So if there are no questions starting off, what I'm going to do is just kind of get into some of the accurate and secure document viewing that WebViewer provides. So what I'll do is just kind of load up our demo here and kind of start to demonstrate this viewing and so on. So we can start to get a look at WebViewer and how it can be used. But if you'd like to do that in your own environment as well, these guides here are the perfect place to do that. If you click download here, then we get to all of our toolkits. So you can download WebViewer directly. We actually have guides for how to integrate WebViewer with different frameworks. So if you're already using React or Angular or something like that, you can integrate. So we have pre-built Vue and also Salesforce as well. We've packaged WebViewer so that it can run within a Salesforce environment in case you happen to be using that. We also include code samples along with all of our toolkits. So whether that's the web or a native toolkit, you can download it and immediately get started with trying out some of this functionality in some of our pre-built samples. And those are available here on the web as well. So you can run them here in the browser or view the source code directly. So I'd encourage you to try that out if you're curious and seeing how WebViewer can integrate within a solution of yours. But as I was saying, what I'm going to be doing now is talking a bit about the accurate and secure document viewing that's available in WebViewer. So what we're viewing here actually is a PDF document. So we've downloaded this from a URL. When we've instantiated WebViewer, we've given it a URL of a PDF document. And what WebViewer is doing is downloading the bytes of that PDF from that URL and rendering that here within the viewer. So it's not doing what some other solutions do, which is to do things like rely on an external service to convert the PDF into an image and then just view the image here in the browser. What we're doing is the rendering portion here directly inside of the browser, and that has a couple of big knock-on effects. So one of those is that it makes the overall solution a lot more performant. So you're not centralizing all of the PDF rasterization work on your server. And converting a PDF into an image is actually pretty intensive. It can be kind of expensive in terms of CPU. There's a lot of processing that might need to happen for many documents to be able to show them and convert them into an image and then show them. But additionally, if you're converting into an image and then transferring that over the network, that can have big knock-on effects in terms of the bandwidth you're using. It can really eat up memory in a server-side environment. And then if you're just converting into an image and then downloading that in the browser and showing that there, you've really committed to a specific DPI. So when the user zooms in, they might see something that's blurry or hard to read, especially fine print, like in some documents like pharmaceutical product packaging or maybe things like contracts. So people really need to be able to zoom way into a document to view text that might be small. And that's doubly true with non-Latin character sets as well. So if we're talking about Chinese, Japanese, or Korean characters, the ability to zoom in and really see small text rendered accurately can be a big deal. But additionally, there are other features that really only having the PDF text itself can provide. So, for example, things like being able to select text, and maybe copy that out to the clipboard, or doing things like searching for text within the document. These are features that users are expecting, and if you couldn't do this kind of thing, it would really make your life difficult. So that's why it's so important for us to be able to work with the actual PDF bytes here inside of the file. Additionally, just overall, the ability to integrate this kind of functionality into a web-based product rather than relying on desktop software is pretty important to a lot of users. I think when people are first implementing solutions for viewing or manipulating documents in the pharmaceutical industry, the sort of fallback position is just, well, have people download the documents and launch desktop software and view and manipulate documents that way. But that's really problematic over time. There's a lot of hidden cost with that, and not just download time, because if you're dealing with small documents, maybe the time to download it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But if you're downloading multiple PDF documents and manipulating them on a local machine, suddenly you now have a lot of different local files you have to manage. And also the end user then needs to be sure that they have software that's able to view and manipulate these files. So it's much better if you can have a solution that's integrated into an overall document management framework, something where users can just go to a website and they don't have to install anything else. They don't have to worry about downloading files and managing files. It's just there. They can do their task immediately, and then they don't have to worry about anything else. That can really cut down on the time spent and just errors in general. So we think it's a very important kind of workflow that's very helpful for anyone providing a solution in this kind of space. So in addition to PDF documents, WebViewer can view a variety of other file types as well. For example, often in the pharmaceutical space or the medical space, we'll see a lot of image-based solutions, especially in clinical settings, hospitals and doctors' offices and so on. A lot of times the standardization is on a format like TIFF. Because TIFF is very widely used. It's an open format. So what we'll see often are patient records and other kinds of documents stored as TIFFs, especially multi-page TIFFs. And that's something that WebViewer has direct support for. So along with loading up directly PNGs and JPEGs, WebViewer can load up single-page TIFF documents as well as multi-page TIFF documents. And so those multi-page TIFFs then are shown just like a multi-page PDF document. And as well, inside of WebViewer, we can save the document as an image as well. So if you have a document that came in as a TIFF, you can view the document here, maybe do some manipulation to it, which we'll sort of talk about in a little bit, and then resave as a multi-page TIFF, say with annotations or new pages added. So it can integrate very nicely into an existing framework. But that said, we can also convert into PDF as well. So you can load up an image document, view it, manipulate it, add pages, add annotations, and then save as a PDF copy if you wish as well. So we try to make that as flexible as possible. We also have built-in support for viewing Office documents as well. So we have built-in support for directly reading and rendering docx, PPTX, and XLSX files. We can also support, additional Office types with a server-side component if you need to view, other Office types too. And CAD files as well with our optional server-side component. If you had CAD files like DWGs, DGNs, DXF, or RVT files, maybe for things like product packaging, then you can convert those into a PDF server-side, and then once converted into a PDF format, then WebViewer can render it here inside of the browser. And the advantage of that really is that you can offer then a single UI for all of your different document types. So rather than having one UI for PDFs and another user interface for Office documents, maybe from some REST provider or something like that, and then another interface for CAD documents. By standardizing on WebViewer and sending all of those documents into WebViewer, you can focus all of your user experience efforts on a single UI and make sure everything is streamlined for your users. So that kind of focus really leads to a much more usable solution for users. It's just way less that they have to learn, and it's way less maintenance on the back end as well. So it's definitely something that we hear a lot about from customers who come to us, and it's something we encourage. So as I was saying, once we load up a document into here, we can always save it as a PDF, and we can save it as image types as well. And when we're opening documents, we have a few different ways of doing that. So I mentioned that this document was opened up by a URL, but we can load up from other APIs too. Here in our guides, we kind of go through a few different examples of ways of opening up documents. By default, generally we recommend opening up from a URL. That's usually because we can employ some optimizations, like we can be careful about only downloading those parts of the document that are needed for rendering whatever is currently visible on screen. And that enables us to do things like support very large documents. So if you have clinical records maybe that are very long, let's say in the thousands of pages, with WebViewer, we can actually support essentially an unbounded number of pages through our ability to only download what's needed to render whatever is currently visible on screen. So even though this is a very large document of 13,000 pages, it opened up right away, and I was able to see that first page immediately. And similarly, if I jump to a random page inside of the document, I'm able to do the same. Even though the entire document isn't fully downloaded to the browser's memory, because I'm accessing it by a URL and because it's a linearized PDF, that means I'm able to just grab those bytes out and show them right away. It also means that I can support very large document types too. So here on our sample, we have a 2 GB document that we're hosting, and basically it's a very large image document. And the same thing applies here. We're able to download the bytes for particular pages without necessarily having to download the entire file into memory. And so that helps a lot in making it possible for users to employ older browsers like IE 11 or 10 and still view these documents without blowing up the browser's memory or anything like that. So, but that said, in addition to opening by URL, we're able to open from blobs or array buffers or base64 data, and of course the file system as well. We can open up a file picker and load that up from the local machine's file storage. But the advantage of being able to open up from a blob or array buffer or base64 data is that means we can transmit the entire file through some sort of secondary channel. You could stream it down from a REST API, or however you get the bytes into the browser's memory, WebViewer is able to load it up, and that's very important for a lot of scenarios that are becoming a lot more popular due to security concerns, such as end-to-end encryption. And that's a security approach where you encrypt the bytes of the document at client side, and whenever the document goes out over the network, whenever it's in transit, it's always encrypted. So that way, no one can open up the document and see what's inside, and then you can transfer it to different servers without having to worry about the data being exposed or leaked or personally identifying information getting out and so on. So end-to-end encryption is something that I think is becoming a lot more popular in the industry, and our ability to open up PDF documents just from in-memory, say, base64 data, it fits in very nicely with that, because you can transfer around data that's encrypted however you're doing that encryption. You can decrypt it inside of the browser and get a byte array back out, and then load that up directly inside of WebViewer. And then after you've manipulated the document or modified it, we can then save it back to a byte array as well. So here we're sort of showing that what we're doing is saving the PDF data into a blob and then posting that up to a REST API, just an example REST URI here. So that fits again very nicely with this end-to-end encryption. So after you've modified it, you can save it to an in-memory array, re-encrypt that, and then send that off to wherever you need to send that to, without having to worry about that data being exposed while in transit or on particular servers. So it's something that really sort of opens up the security possibilities with WebViewer. And then another thing I just wanted to quickly point out before sort of pausing for questions is that because we're dealing with actual PDF data here inside of the web browser, that means that we can take advantage of additional capabilities inside of a PDF file. So that includes things like the ability to read a document's outline, which is like a table of contents that can be baked into some documents. I can just bring one up here. Here's an annual report that has a built-in sort of table of contents here, and then we can jump to different locations inside of the document. So this really helps with navigation, making a document really easy to use and accessible. And additionally, with CAD-based files, we can support optional content groups. So if you're working with product packaging, for example, it might have a variety of what are called optional content groups on it. So, for example, this is a blueprint, but it could be pharmaceutical packaging as well. And a lot of times it will have optional content that designers need to remove in order to see particular elements more accurately and get a sense of where they are on the page. And because WebViewer has the full PDF bytes here inside of the browser, it can support these kinds of optional content groups. We can flip them off and immediately see the re-rendered page, or flip them back on and see that content again. So that's just a bit about how WebViewer can enable you to provide this kind of accurate and secure viewing of a wide variety of document types inside of the browser. So I thought I'd just take a look at some of the questions that were posted. And someone was asking whether there's any sort of core guide or code guide for opening the first few pages of a large document within WebViewer. And for that, I would recommend going to our guides here inside of web viewer documentation and read about opening the documents here. We generally recommend opening up from a URL in order to see the benefits of linearization. We talk as well about how to optimize the file for fast viewing inside of the browser here in our optimization section of our documentation. And in general, the way that we recommend preparing a document to be viewed inside of WebViewer is to create something we call a viewer optimized PDF. So if the document isn't already linearized, it's a good idea to run this viewer optimization on it. And what this will do is linearize the PDF so that it will reorganize the bytes so that the bytes are all grouped by page. Similar in a lot of ways to a YouTube video, the way that different frames bytes are grouped together within that document. Additionally, it will add thumbnails into the document so that you can render the document very quickly so that for the end user, even if the page is very complicated, because it has an embedded thumbnail, for the end user, it appears that the document shows up right away. So that's something that we definitely recommend as well. So what I'd like to sort of talk about next is our ability to review and approve, approve documents. So kind of have workflows where different users will look at a document and point out things that might be problematic, or maybe if a document is ready to be published, or disseminated, then to approve that document for doing so, and how our collaboration technology fits into that scenario. And in general, the overall problem here is that with a lot of documents being reviewed in the pharma space, there are many different people that might need to look over that document. Multiple authors would sort of need to review things and point out problems. And how that's generally solved without a solution like this is that people will email documents around. They might download them locally, maybe make an annotation with desktop PDF software, and then email that copy out. And that leads to lots of different versions sort of floating around. It is a real waste of space because now you have lots and lots of PDF documents that you have to manage, and these might be very large, so that could become problematic. And overall, it just results in lost time and potentially errors as well slipping into the document. If accidentally you might use an old version, or maybe miss an annotation that someone added that says, hey, let's pay attention to this thing, or revise the language. So the risk is pretty high with collaborating in sort of old-fashioned ways like email or just sharing files. What WebViewer can do is kind of consolidate all of that work into a single interface that's integrated into your overall system. And that way, users don't have to download these documents or transfer them around. They can just immediately communicate with other users. And the way that's done in general is through annotations. Annotations are sort of another layer atop of PDF documents. So you might have used this when, say, like highlighting content inside of the document, to go and to sort of note that content, or there are shapes that we provide and that are very common in most desktop PDF software. The ability to do things like strike through content, maybe this is text that should be removed or something like that, or to draw on a PDF page to circle some content. Basic editing and markup and commenting capabilities are an essential part of the PDF format, really part of why it's such a useful document type for end users. And so we provide all of the sort of standard inbuilt annotations that are typically available with PDF software, but we do also have the capability to to enable you to customize annotations however you'd like. So if you'd like to add in some entirely new kind of annotation with its own shape, or if you'd like to take an existing annotation and kind of make it a bit smarter, like maybe calling out custom JavaScript code to advance a workflow somehow, that's all possible with our viewer. And we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about UI customization. Here in these standard annotations, we can still get an idea of how web viewers' collaboration can speed things up. So you'll notice that when I opened up this comment panel here, every single one of the annotations that we've made is listed here on the right. And that's great because that means that I can use this for navigation a bit. So for example, if I wanted to jump to this annotation up here, all I have to do is click on it, and then I go to this highlighted annotation on the first page. Or if I wanted to jump down to another one elsewhere in the document. These annotations listed in this panel here make it very easy to go in and jump around in the document. And I can sort by position or by the time that each document or each comment was made, or I can search for particular annotations that might be relevant to me. And actually, as a way of speeding up that kind of workflow, where maybe what I want to do is just find those annotations that are really particular to me that I need to actually pay attention to. You know, like maybe I'm a lawyer looking at this pharma document, and I need to make sure that, you know, different parts of legal language are worded correctly. So I might need to jump directly to those annotations that are relevant to me. And we've added in a couple of features that make that a lot easier. And one of those is @sign mentions. So for example, I can say @sign Aaron in here. We don't have this set up in this viewer, but what you can do when you're instantiating WebViewer from within a web page is give it a list of different strings to look for, different names. So here I've added in Aaron, but it could be, you know, whatever, you know, users you might have in your system. And that way, when that's set up, WebViewer will look for any comments that have these @sign strings and can run whatever callbacks you pass in. So what you can do is hand it a JavaScript callback, and you can say, okay, when an @sign mention is made, pass the string into my JavaScript code, and then you can run additional functionality from that JavaScript code. So you could do something like email a given user. You know, it's just arbitrary JavaScript we're running, so you could make a connection into gmail.com and go and automatically send out an email message to this user. You could look up inside of an internal table, you know, the email address for whoever Aaron is, and then send that out directly. Or you could do something like add this into a task list internally. So if you have, you know, a list of different things that people should be looking at, you can you know, put that into that to-do list. And additionally, we have the ability to set annotation states on each annotation. This is something that's baked into the PDF specification. So we're, you know, doing standards compliance annotations here. So the ones out of the box that the PDF specification lists are these accepted and rejected and canceled and completed. But you can change these to be whatever you'd like. So if there is some different workflow that needs to be followed, like maybe if I'm highlighting legal language that needs to be revised, maybe there are specific steps that we need to go through to revise, and approve that legal language. Like maybe, it needs to go through 2 levels of approval or something along those lines. And if that's the case, if there is some sort of custom workflow that we need to follow here, we can essentially encode that in these annotation states. You can think of these like the states of a finite automaton in a workflow system. Yet another workflow system, if you're familiar with that one, YAWL. And so we each of the states within that, automaton, we could encode here in these annotation states. And that way, users can kind of guide themselves through the process of working through each of these annotations. And because the annotation is anchored on a certain part of the document, it's much easier to understand what parts of the content I should be looking at, rather than just making a comment on the document as a whole, which is what a lot of document management systems or content management systems provide. They'll have sort of comment threads that are just about the entire document, but by anchoring it to specific content on a specific page, it's much easier to have a conversation about the exact information that needs to be examined and potentially revised. If you've used a collaborative system online, like for example, Google Docs has a very similar workflow where you can highlight a certain piece of text, tag in other users, and then mark a certain conversation as completed or still needs review and so on. So it's a similar kind of workflow that we're enabling here on top of PDF documents. And again, because you can take a wide variety of different document types and put them into WebViewer, that means that this kind of collaborative workflow can be applied across the board for all document types, rather than having specific ones for specific documents, or having to show an entirely different UI just because you're showing a different file type. Now, in terms of actually having different users work together on this document, so I've just been showing how this one user named guest can come in, but in practice you'd have different users who should be identified by different names. Like theoretically, if I'm logging into the system, it should somehow identify me as this user named Aaron. And the way we can do that is just a bit of customization within WebViewer. So when a user is logging in, and we're instantiating the WebViewer client side, so when we're here instantiating it, what we can do is customize the viewer at that point. So here what we're doing is we're setting the user making annotations. We're just passing in a string and saying that their name is Justin. So there's no authentication or anything here. WebViewer is meant to be a very sort of discrete toolkit. It's not meant to manage users or provide a DMS to manage your documents or anything like that. It's just meant to be a document processing toolkit. And the idea is that that way we're not dictating how you manage your users or how you manage your documents, and you're free to use whatever existing infrastructure you have for that. So it would be up to you to authenticate a user into your system, but if you wanted to identify them within annotations, you can add this annotation user string as well. And if you wanted to bake in additional custom information like a globally unique user ID or something like that, you could absolutely add that into each annotation as well to better identify this user. Within the same kind of paradigm of customizing WebViewer at the instantiation time, we can also set permissions as well. So this Justin user is an administrator, and so Justin's able to go in and modify the annotations of other users. But if I were to log in as Sally, Sally is not set up as an administrator, and so Sally can come in here and see the annotations of other users, and Sally can make new annotations. That's possible for Sally to do, but Sally can't modify or delete existing annotations. However, it's possible for this user to come in and make comments on existing ones too. So Sally could come in and say, let's review further, and post that here onto the conversation thread. And then other users can come in and do much the same thing. So Justin can come in and say, looks good. Maybe Justin can accept this annotation here and sort of close off that conversation thread. There might also be cases where you want to review and approve the document as a whole, and sometimes that's driven through the ability to stamp different values onto a PDF page. So we have that as well baked into the viewer. We can essentially stamp a set of existing shapes. So if we wanted to, say, approve the document as a whole, it's possible to do so. Just adding that into the document. And we have a variety of other pre-built ones, but you can also add your own if you have a set of stamps that you'd like users to be able to apply to a document. Now, in the workflow that I've been showing, I've kind of been switching between different users by changing this context on here. But in practice, what you'd have are different users with different browsers looking at the same document, potentially at the same time, and then adding annotations and watching each other's as annotations be added onto the document. And that's something that WebViewer can absolutely support as well. So what happens is when you make an annotation on a document, WebViewer raises an event at that point. It says annotation changed. And when the annotation changed event happens, it makes available an XML representation of that annotation. And at that point, you can broadcast it out to other browsers and have them view that same annotation at the same time. And we actually have some source code for making this a little easier to set up in one's environment. It's actually on GitHub. Here in this in this code sample here. So here's a diagram sort of showing how it works. Basically, in this sample code, it's Node.js based code, and it creates a WebSocket connection to each browser that connects to it. And then when one browser sends up an annotation in the form of encoded XML, this example server will save it out to a SQL database. And we just sort of chose SQL databases because that's something that a lot of people know and are familiar with. And so it saves it out to the SQLite database and then broadcasts it out to different browsers. Again, this is just a proof of concept code example that we've published just to give our customers a starting point for adding in collaboration. But we've left it very open. So we want it to be something that people can take and customize and integrate into their systems because really, you want to customize this for however your users work and how you would like them to be able to collaborate. So in this sample, for example, everyone who logs into a given to view a given document is seeing the annotations made by other users. But in practice, you'd have different users kind of working together in groups, and you wouldn't necessarily want everyone in the company to be able to view a document, much less read all the annotations that are made on it. So in practice, you would want to customize this sample code to control which documents are viewable by which people and how those annotations are shared. But this is sort of just meant as a starting point. And again, we're showing how to save annotations sent up by one browser. What we're doing is just putting that into a SQL table. And then for the annotations viewable by everyone else, that's just a simple select query for that document ID, grabbing all of the XML strings and then broadcasting those down to the other browsers. So if you'd like to start getting this set up in your environment and try out collaboration, this sample here on GitHub is a great place to start. And we'll talk more about this a bit later. Hopefully we have some time. But when it comes to UI customization, this GitHub sample here is very useful as well. It's the WebViewer UI source code. So everything that we saw with WebViewer here, so everything inside of this iframe here, anything about this interface is posted here to this GitHub project. So that means you can fork that UI and change anything you'd like about how these toolbars are laid out, or just about how this interface appears. Anything you'd like to change in terms of the user experience or the UI is available for your customization. Let's see here. So, and actually, one way that we've kind of made that a bit interesting is we've customized the UI to show video annotations. And let me see if I can actually get to any of this here in our viewer. So we have somewhere we have an actual demo of this. There we are. So what we've done is taken the WebViewer UI and placed it above video content as well. So we're able to support any video types that are playable inside of the browser. And what we can do is come in and make annotations just as we did on top of a document. We can annotate specific frames, and then those are tied to these frames inside of the viewer here. So I can do things like circle different areas. And then those show up here inside of the viewer. So that way, if I'm watching this video, and reviewing something, as something problematic comes up, then I'll be able to see that across these frames. And so the same kind of customization and the same kind of collaboration and annotation workflows can apply to video content as well. We also have the ability to do this over HTML content. So if you have some sort of web page that needs to be reviewed by multiple people, you can similarly make annotations on top of that HTML. And this all goes back to WebViewer's high degree of customizability and just how flexible this solution is. So let's see. I also wanted to touch a bit on form filling as well. So, sometimes in addition to viewing sort of static content and collaborating on that, users will need to be able to form fill documents and potentially sign them too. So we have built-in support for PDF forms. So here what we have is a 1040 form. And we can go in and just as with using desktop PDF software, we can go in and start adding values into form fields. But what we're showing here in this sample is the ability to do a couple of things dynamically. So after the user has typed in values here and tabbed away, we've automatically extracted that form field value. And we've also figured out what the name of that form field is inside of the low-level PDF. And we've automatically generated a JSON object here based on these values. So that makes it very easy just to sort of go in and extract values from a PDF as it's being filled out. So you could use this to do things like go and grab values from a database in your backend that might have additional information here. So, if I've got this user that's typed in the first name Aaron, maybe there aren't so many users that have that first name, and I can maybe pre-populate a list of drop-down values here and let them just choose from a last name rather than typing that in. And then if I have their name, I can go and look and find, say, the home address, the city, et cetera, and pre-populate a lot of these values. And that can be great, not just for time savings, because I'm not having to type that in every time now, but also for reducing errors, which can be a big deal, especially if we're talking about, here's an income tax return. You definitely would not want any errors on this, or it could be very costly. Who knows exactly how much that could cost. And so with other kinds of forms that we're creating and filling out, it can be a big deal to pre-populate those values to keep the error count low. One other thing that's very important with our PDF form filling is that we can support digital signatures as well. We also have support for e-signatures, which are just the appearance of a signature on a page, but additionally, we can support true digital signatures on a document. We have a pre-built UI here for it, so I could draw my oh, that's pretty illegible. Maybe I can just type instead. So here I can type my name or upload if I had a signature already scanned in or something, and then I can create that and add that right into a signature field. I can also add that directly onto a page if the page doesn't have a built-in signature field. So if I just wanted, just the appearance of that signature in a specific location, that's entirely possible. This can all be automated too as well. So if I knew the exact location on a page where a signature should be applied, then I could apply that either inside of WebViewer here in the client-side browser, maybe before the document is loaded up, so I can, automatically add that and then view the result. Or that could happen inside of the backend as well. So if you have a server-side process that's pre-processing documents, or maybe batch signing a host of documents, that can be done with our native toolkit on the server too. And we support both per field signatures as well as certification signatures that apply to the entire document. So that can give a bit of flexibility in signing workflow. And as well, we're in the process of revamping this as well. In our next upcoming versions later this year of our signature capabilities, we're planning to have validation available so that you can open up an existing document and see whether the document has been modified since having been signed. So I think that covers what I was wanting to talk about with regards to review, collaboration, and approval. Let me just see if there are any questions. And someone was asking whether multiple signatories can perform digital signatures simultaneously at different places in the same document. And to some extent, that's true, depending on what one means by simultaneously. So when we're making multiple digital signatures on a document, if those signatures are true digital signatures, then what happens is for each of those signatures, a computationally sound hash of the document's bytes is computed based on the user certificate, and then that's embedded into the document. And then when a subsequent digital signature is made, that computation needs to now happen with their their certificate as well. And that needs to also take into account the previous signature, because if I'm signing after somebody else, I want to take into account the fact that they've already signed. And it could apply some other signature or something like that. So that means that essentially multiple digital signatures need to happen serially. One person signs and then another person has to sign afterwards, because that first signature is essentially part of the bytes that are computed in the second signature. Now, WebViewer does support that use case. In order to support that, we have something called incremental saving, which is a way of saving bytes at the end of a PDF document without changing the bytes previously inside of the document. So by using incremental save, you can support multiple signatures being added onto a document. But technically, that's done in serial. It's not something that happens simultaneously because, again, it sort of has to happen in order. Actually, a bit very similar to blockchain. If you're familiar with distributed ledger technology, it's very similar. It's like we're adding things on and taking into account the entire history of the document when making a new signature on the document. And additionally, there's another way of applying signatures too, where you just apply e-signatures on the document, and then you make a certification signature across the document as a whole when it's ready to be finalized. And that workflow is a nice one because it doesn't require each user to make a digital signature. They just have to make e-signatures, so you don't have to assign a certificate to each of them and manage the public key infrastructure for all of that. You can just have them, draw their signature on the page and then use your own certificate, say like an organizational certificate, like a PDFTron certificate or DocuSign certificate or whatever it is, and certify the document as a whole so that that way you still are able to see whether the document was modified after having been signed. So if someone adds some zeros onto the document saying what you owe, then that signature of yours is now invalidated. But each user doesn't have to have their own certificate assigned to them. So that's another workflow as well, and that definitely gives you the ability to add signatures simultaneously. Like at that point, it could happen essentially concurrently, because there's only one true digital signature at the end, that certification signature. And we have details for each of these approaches within our guides. So if you go to our WebViewer guides and look at our digital signature information, we sort of go through each of these scenarios and talk about how to certify a document or sign just one specific field. Let's see. So I just want to definitely briefly at least touch on document assembly and anonymization. So we also have the ability, because we're working with PDF documents and other document types directly inside of the browser, to sort of assemble new documents and create them here and save them off. So, this solves a problem where new pharmaceutical records need to be composed or maybe put together into a document that's sent out to an insurer or something like that, or a pharmaceutical organization, or submitted to the FDA or some other regulatory body. And so it's very common in pharma and life sciences to need to be able to make new documents up and maybe do things like merge different documents together or add in new pages into an existing document. And that's something that WebViewer makes very, very easy because of our ability to have the actual document bytes here in the browser. We have a pretty neat sample for this here under our advanced section, under our PDF manipulation here. So what we've done in this sample is basically build up a thumbnail-based view of each of these documents. So you can drag and drop pages from one document over into the other. So maybe this is a patient record, and maybe this is a master file that I'm consolidating a bunch of patient records into. And maybe I need to grab this third page and put that into the new document. Well, with WebViewer, I can just drag and drop these thumbnail pages over, and then within here, I can rearrange these pages too. So if I need to, put page 2 at the beginning, I can do that. Or if I needed to delete certain pages or rotate them, that kind of page manipulation is baked directly into the viewer. And I can I can extract specific pages as well. And once I'm done with that, I can save that as a new copy. Additionally, different kinds of annotations that I make on the page can be baked directly into the document as well. So they could be flattened so that maybe if I wanted to stamp information on here, I could then burn that into the PDF itself, so that that's sort of permanently part of that PDF document. Additionally, for navigation purposes, I might want to change the bookmarks baked into a document. So this document has no outline, but with WebViewer, I could add in new values into here. And additionally, to make navigation a bit easier, WebViewer has the ability to turn any annotation into a link. So what I could do here, if I wanted to, say, make this a link to a specific part of the document, maybe like a subsequent page, I can actually do that directly here inside of the viewer. So I could link this out to some external website, like if I had another document that I wanted to link to from inside of this page, or if I just wanted this to jump down to, say, page 5. That way I could have like a table of contents page. I could highlight certain pages that I would jump to inside of the document, or external documents if necessary, and just kind of immediately make that available to users. So it's a very intuitive way to add in hyperlinking functionality and make documents a lot easier to navigate and use. Now, additionally, when composing documents like this, there might be confidential information like patient records or social security numbers or phone numbers or things like that that I might need to remove. And with WebViewer, again, because we have the PDF document itself directly inside of the browser, we can actually perform redactions on content directly on the PDF and extract or eradicate personally identifying or confidential information from the PDF. So with WebViewer, what happens is it goes in at a low level and totally removes any text or images or vector information underneath where I'm choosing to redact from. And so in this workflow here, what I can do is add a rectangle onto the page. These are actually annotations, so I could collaborate with somebody else and maybe make some candidate redactions, and then have an administrator or a lawyer take a look and see if this information actually does need to be redacted, or if that's not necessary at all. Or what I could do is have sort of an automated process where maybe what I can do is search for a given piece of text potentially to be redacted, even with like a regular expression, and then automatically add that in as a redaction rectangle. And so other users can come in, review and approve different areas to redact, and then when I'm ready, I can actually burn those into the document, fully eradicating that content and making a new copy of the PDF with that personally identifying information removed. So actually, I think that brings us right up to the end of the webinar. The only other sort of area that I was wanting to cover was the customizability of the user interface. So as we saw, the WebViewer UI source code is available on GitHub. But that said, we do have higher level APIs that make the UI customization a bit easier too. Let me move to another document here. Within this UI here, we have a lot of high-level APIs to do things like change, say, the color scheme, but also do things like remove different buttons. Like, let's say I wanted to get rid of the download and print and text selection buttons, just to lock down the interface a bit more to help thwart people from grabbing this content from the viewer. And additionally, I can do things like remove different tools from here as well. So, for users, it might be a little overwhelming to have too many different kinds of annotations. So the ability to remove those and streamline things for users just makes it a lot easier for them to get started. And we have high-level APIs for this so that it's easy to go in and remove these things, even on like a per user or per role type basis. And beyond this kind of customization, we also have the ability to leverage WebViewer inside of third-party UIs. So if you have an existing UI that you've already made up and your users are totally used to that and you just want to recreate that but do PDF rendering within the client-side browser, WebViewer can do that. So we have this page-turning interface here. We actually got this from GitHub. It's like a free just library for doing document viewing this way. And WebViewer is actually still doing the rendering of this document here inside of this third-party viewer. We're just sort of leveraging it under the hood. So if there is an existing UI that you'd like to remain compatible with, but still take advantage of WebViewer's capabilities for rendering and manipulating documents, that's totally doable as well. So I think that brings me to the end of everything I was wanting to cover. We're sort of at the top of the hour. I don't know if there are any more questions or anything. But if you do have any further questions, we have full pre-sales support. So if you wanted to reach out to us, just go to pdftron.com, go to support and resources, and then free trial tech support. And then if you fill out this information and any questions or problems you might be running into, or just looking for any sort of further resources, this form goes to myself and my team. So we'll reach out right away, and happy to work with you throughout your evaluation of PDFTron. So thanks so much for attending this session. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to hearing more. So thanks so much. And this demo will be available online. So we'll post up the video, and you should get a link to this recording after the webinar concludes. So thanks so much.